Adverse selection, ensuring of risks that are more prone to losses than the average risk. Agent and or producer, a legal representative of an insurance company. The classification of producer usually includes agents and brokers. Agents are the agents of the insurer. Applicant or proposed insured. It is a person that is applying for insurance. The beneficiary is a person who receives the benefits of an insurance policy. Death benefit is the amount that is paid upon the death of the insured in a life insurance policy. Fraud. It is intentional misrepresentation or deceit with the intent to induce a person to part with something of value. Fraud is the intentional misrepresentation or deceit with the intent to induce a person to part with something of value. Insurance policy. It is a contract between a policy owner and or insured and an insurance company which agrees to pay the insured or the beneficiary for loss caused by specific events. Insured. Person covered by the insurance policy. They may or may not be the policy owner. Insurer. Principal. The company who issues an insurance policy. Lapse. It is the policy termination due to non-payment of premium. Life insurance. It is the coverage on human lives. The coverage of human lives. Policy owner. The person entitled to exercise the rights and privileges in the policy. Premium. The money paid to the insurance company for the insurance policy. Insurance is a transfer of risk of loss from an individual or a business entity to an insurance company, which in turn spreads the costs of unexpected losses to many individuals. If there were no insurance mechanism, the cost of a loss would have to be borne solely by the individual who suffered the loss. Insurance is the transfer of risk or loss. Insurance is the transfer of risk of loss. The cost of an insured's loss is transferred over to the insurer and spread among other insureds. Insurance transaction. It includes any of the following: solicitation by mail, negotiations by mail or any other means, sale, effectuation of a contract or insurance, and advising an individual concerning coverage or claims. Types of insurers. An insurer is a person or company engaged as the principal party in the business of entering into insurance contracts. There are several classifications of insurers depending on the type of ownership, location of incorporation, and other characteristics. Stock companies are owned by the stockholders who provide the capital necessary to establish and operate the insurance company. Stock companies are owned by the stockholders who provide the capital necessary to establish and operate the insurance company and who share in any profits or losses. So stock companies are owned by the stockholders who provide the capital necessary to establish and operate the insurance company and who share in any profits or losses. Officers are elected by the stockholders and manage stock insurance companies. Traditionally, Stock companies issue non-participating policies in which policy owners do not share in profits or losses. A non-participating stock policy does not pay dividends to policy owners. However, taxable dividends are paid to stockholders. Mutual companies are owned by the policy owners and issue participating policies. With participating policies, policy owners are entitled to dividends, which in the case of mutual companies are a return of excess premiums and are therefore non-taxable. Dividends are generated when the premiums and the earnings combined exceed the actual cost of providing coverage, creating a surplus. Dividends are not guaranteed. Domicile of insurer. Insurers can also be defined by the location of incorporation and whether or not they are authorized to write business in a state. The insurer's domicile or location of incorporation will determine whether an insurance company is considered domestic, foreign, or alien. In the state they are incorporated in, they are considered a domestic insurer. If the insurer is operating in a state other than the one they are incorporated in, they are called a foreign insurer. If the insurer is incorporated outside of the United States, they are considered an alien insurer. If the insurer is incorporated outside of the United States, they are considered an alien insurer. A contract is an agreement between two or more parties enforceable by law. Because of unique aspects of insurance transactions, the general law of contracts had to be modified to fit the needs of insurance. In order for insurance contracts to be legally binding, they must have four essential elements: a legal purpose, competent parties, consideration, and agreement or an offer and acceptance. There must be a definite offer by one party, and the other party must accept this offer in its exact terms. In insurance, the applicant usually makes the offer when submitting the application. Acceptance takes place when an insurer's underwriter approves the application and issues a policy. The binding force in any contract is the consideration. Consideration is something of value that each party gives to the other. The consideration on the part of the insured is the payment of premium and the representations made in the application. The consideration on the part of the insurer is the promise to pay in the event of loss. Insurer's consideration is the promise to pay for losses. Insured's consideration is the payment of premium and statements on the application. The parties to a contract must be capable of entering into a contract in the eyes of the law. Generally, this requires that both parties be of legal age, mentally competent to understand the contract, and not under the influence of drugs or alcohol. The purpose of the contract must be legal and not against public policy. To ensure legal purpose of a life insurance policy, for example, it must have both insurable interest and consent. A contract without a legal purpose is considered void. A contract without a legal purpose is considered void and cannot be enforced by any party. A contract of adhesion is prepared by one of the parties, insurer, and accepted or rejected by the other party, insured. Insurance policies are not drawn up through negotiations, and an insured A contract of adhesion is prepared by one of the parties and accepted or rejected by the other party. Insurance policies are not drawn up through negotiations, and an insured has little to say about its provisions. In other words, insurance contracts are offered on a take it or leave it basis by an insurer, and any ambiguities in the contract will be settled in favor of the insured. Aleatory contract. Insurance contracts are aleatory, which means there is an exchange of unequal amounts or values. The premium paid by the insured is small in relation to the amount that will be paid by the insurer in the event of loss. Life and health example. John purchases a life policy for $100,000. His monthly premium is $100. If John only has the policy for 2 months, which means he only paid $200 in premiums, and he unexpectedly died, his beneficiary will receive $100,000, a $200 contribution on the part of the insured in exchange for $100,000 benefit from the insurer, illustrates an aleatory contract. Property and casualty example. John purchases a homeowner's insurance policy for $100,000. His monthly premium of $100. His monthly premium is $100. If John only had the policy for 2 months, which means he only paid $200 in premiums, and the home was unexpectedly destroyed by a covered peril. If John only had the policy for 2 months, which means he only paid $200 in premiums, and the home was unexpectedly destroyed by a covered peril, John will receive $100,000, a $200 contribution on the part of the insured in exchange for $100,000 in benefit from the insurer. This illustrates an aleatory contract. It is an uneven exchange of values. A unilateral contract. In a unilateral contract, only one of the parties in the contract is legally bound to do anything. The insured makes no legally binding promises. However, an insurer is legally bound to pay losses covered by a policy in force. A conditional contract requires that certain conditions must be met by the policy owner and the company in order for the contract to be executed, and before each party fulfills its obligations. For example, the insured must pay the premium and provide proof of loss in order for the insurer to cover a claim. A warranty is an absolutely true statement upon which the validity of the insurance policy depends. Breach of warranties can be considered grounds for voiding the policy or a return of policy. Because of such a strict definition, statements made by applicants for life and health insurance policies, for example, are not considered warranties, except in cases of fraud. Representations are statements believed to be true to the best of one's knowledge, but they are not guaranteed to be true for insurance purposes. Representations are the answers the insured gives to the questions on the insurance application. For insurance purposes, representations are the answers the insured gives to the questions on the insurance policy. Unique statements on the application are considered misrepresentations and could void the contract. Untrue statements on the application are considered misrepresentations and could void the contract. A material misrepresentation is a statement that, if discovered, would alter the underwriting decision of the insurance company. Furthermore, If material misrepresentations are intentional, they are considered fraud. Representations are statements believed to be true. Insured statements on the application are representations. The application is the starting point and basic source of information used by the company in the risk selection process. Although applications are not uniform and may vary from one insurer to another, they all have the same basic components. Part 1, general information, and Part 2, medical information. General information of the application includes the general questions about the applicant, such as name, age, address, birth date, gender, income, marital status, and occupation. It will also inquire about the existing policies and if the proposed insurance will replace them.